holy moly, my book started to sell like hotcakes on TikTok. This is part 2 of how I became a full-time independent illustrator with enough income to support a family of 4. The first half I covered like the beginning of my life all the way up to getting my first full-time illustration job, which was in studio. So I feel like that was sort of the first part of my process, and the next part is how I went from working full-time in studio to being fully independent. There's definitely some related skills that you need to do these 2 things, but working full-time in studio is very different than having your own client list, having your own products, and being on your own. So I wanted to talk about that transition in its own video. All right, so as I said in part 1, this is a long, rambling, talky video. So grab something to drink or something to draw and we'll chat. All right, so I ended off with, I had gotten my first big job, which was for Disney Interactive, and I was working full-time in studio. I was making a decent income. I think it was, I want to say $50,000 a year, I think was what I was getting paid, and it was in 2011. So that gives you an idea of income. And I worked there for a bit over a year, and then life changes and the studio ended up getting closed. And I looked at working for other game companies, but I had realized at that time that all of my friends who worked in games were getting laid off every 2 years.
Oh no!
And I really wanted stability.
And I don't know why I decided I really want stability, therefore I'll do children's illustration.
Thinking back on that, that doesn't make sense. Just to make my life interesting, apparently. I think it's more like games doesn't give me stability. It's difficult to find game companies that match my personal style, which is more cute and friendly. Most game companies are like hardcore games and like monsters battling and fighting and like dark, and that's not my style, obviously. There was like this sort of like really cute, like, I don't know, like, you know, Farmville like type sort of games where it was like more for moms. We're sort of phasing out a bit anyway, and so I just didn't feel like I really fit in the industry anymore either. And so I thought about what I really like, sky open, I don't know what the phrase is, but blue sky, you can choose whatever you want, ideal scene. In a dream world, what would I want to be doing? And for me, in a dream world, I would be making children's books. And I wasn't making children's books because I was told by one of my teachers that that was not a job that you could make money with. And I'm still finding out if that's true or not.
What?
Generally, as an artist, you're going to get told that no matter what it is that you want to do, people are going to tell you, you can't make money doing that. And there are people that make money doing that, which is why it exists. It's not necessarily easy to make money doing it. It's probably a lot easier to make money, you know, being like a business-y person or a doctor or an accountant or whatever. But I chose this life, unfortunately. So I guess I'm just gonna have to figure out how to make money doing it. So I was doing some freelance at that point in time. I was just doing like little gigs. Like there was a small film company that I did some illustration work for, and I was doing some additional work for Gaia Online, making like outfits for their avatars. I think I did get like a colleague who wanted to do an illustration for a children's book and like a quick like mom pop walk, you know, kind of like reader type book, and I did something for them. But I wasn't getting a lot of work. So I started applying for jobs because I wanted to have a family and I wanted insurance. So I still wanted to try and work in studio. And this job I feel like is still impossible, but I was like, I want to work full-time in-house as doing children's illustration. That's not a job that exists. There aren't companies hiring for that, but that's the thing that I want. And I magically made it appear. And there was a company local to me in the Bay Area of California that was making children's products, and they needed an illustrator to help with their like children's books. And they weren't doing children's books quite yet, but they had comics for kids. and educational material that they needed illustrated, and like mazes and, you know, find pages and stuff like that, like editorial content for kids. And they were hiring in-house, and they'd never hired in-house before, but they suddenly needed one. And I was like, this is the perfect job for me. And I applied for it, and I actually got turned down for it. And then a week later, they're like, actually, the other person didn't take it. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, please. And I think the reason why I was originally turned down for the job is that it wasn't a great style match. And I don't think it was actually a hurdle that I was ever able to overcome. I worked there for about, I think 5 to 7 years. I don't remember. It was a long time. I worked there for many, many years. And I still feel like at the end of the day, the reason that job didn't work out is what I love and what I think is cute isn't what the CEO thinks is cute. And so I would literally have to like take my illustrations and make them ugly, in my opinion. I would take it, like I'd make something, I'm like, this is so cute, I love it so much, and then I would ruin it, and they're like, we love it. And it hurt my soul. And I think just after about many years of that and not feeling like I was the right fit for them, I decided that I needed to move on. And again, there's not really children's illustration jobs in-house. So the only choice I really had was to strike it out on my own and become a children's book illustrator. Plus also, like, I was writing and illustrating stories and children's books with them, with like the editorial team. I was like, I have my own stories to tell, and I really want the world to see them. I really actually want to do this on my own, and to make the thing that makes me really excited and giddy that I love, and not have someone always altering it, because it's their message. It's fine, that's what your job is when you're working full house, but like I wanted it to be my voice. So I began the journey of creating independent business, but I was still working full time. So the way that I did that is I would have a full 9-to-5 day illustrating. And then I had kids, so I would come home, I would do dinner, I'd get the kids from daycare or preschool or whatever, I'd spend time with them, do dinner, do bedtime, and then once they went to bed, which was around I don't know, 8 o'clock, I would go back to work, and I would work from 8 till at least 10, and then often till midnight. And then after midnight, I'm a tired bear. No good work gets done for me personally. And I go sleep. And that's sort of where I began building my social media, is that I would make my illustration post at night and then post it in the morning before work. And I also rebuilt my entire portfolio. And this, I think, was the major lesson that I learned, is even if you're working full-time in studio as an artist, your portfolio may be fully inapplicable for your next job. So it's really important. And I honestly think this was part of why I got burnt out working full-time in studio, was I wasn't making my own art. I wasn't making personal art for me. And I got burnt out creating other people's visions. And I needed to continue to create my own work. And I stopped loving art, even like during that time period when I was working full time. And I think it was because I wasn't creating my own art. And once I sort of put myself back in school, and I signed up for online classes. I went to, I think they're called now the School for Visual Storytelling, online courses. And I started doing those classes, and I started doing personal work, and I started doing portfolio pieces and applying to their contests so that I could use those like prompts for the contests that they did in my portfolio to help me like come up with ideas, because like getting a portfolio from nothing is really hard. Like I said, the reason I went to college was because I needed structure and I needed people to tell me what to do and like to give me advice. And I was like, they're like, here's a prompt. I'm like, great. Thank you for my homework assignment. I will turn it in at the end of the month. And I did that to create my portfolio and to create a new style and figure out what I like anymore, because I had no idea. Like, I was working in studio for 5 to 7 years. I didn't know what I liked anymore. I didn't know what my style was. I didn't know what I wanted to draw or how I wanted to draw it. Like it was so confusing to be a professional. I was making 6 figures in the studio and have no idea what I like to draw or what I wanted to do. Like, I just feel like that should happen, and that's what was going on. So I basically started from scratch. I was like, I have no portfolio. I'm putting myself back in school. I'm doing my master's, but it's online, and I'm not going into classes because I have a family. And you'll leave it at that. So I did online classes, and I picked the areas that I felt like I was struggling the most, and I did those courses, and I made a new portfolio, and then I made like a full 10 to 12 pieces, and then I would look at it and I would compare it to other art that I liked, and if it wasn't up to snuff or if I was missing stuff, I was reiterating on it. And so I think I ended up making 2 fully new portfolio, and I have them on my website still at carliannecreates.com. When you go to my portfolio, it'll show up. There's like style 1 and style 2, and that was basically, I did one of those styles, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is right for children's illustration, so I did a whole nother portfolio. And this took at least a year of doing this, of like putting myself back in school and sort of relearning art. It was a year, maybe 2 of doing it. And again, this is, at night on weekends that I'm doing this. So I'm doing these classes, and in the beginning of doing them, I was really burnt out from working in studios. And I had especially some because I was working in studio, I also did freelance. I'm the girl who does too much stuff. So I would work in studio, and I would also do freelance, and I would also do my own projects and have 2 kids and financially support my family. And I had some really bad experiences with some clients, and they were basically like, you're not very good, and even though you think you're good, you'll never be good enough. And it really shook me to my core of my confidence as an artist. I'm trying not to cry. But I got to the point where I wasn't sure I wanted to do art anymore at all, which is why I've said before, there have been times when I've tried not to do art. And so this was that time where I was like, maybe I just won't do art. And I was looking into getting jobs like teaching, at a preschool or something like that. And it just felt so sad. Like I was a wilty flower. And I just realized, like, when I create, it's just what I need to do. Because if I'm not creating, then I'm just like a sad person. And nobody wants that, especially me, or my husband or my children. So anyways, I was pretty broken at that point. And when I started doing the classes and listening to the podcasts that they have, it was very validating, because like I said, I've been working for 7 years and wasn't sure if I was any good. And I would listen to the podcast, and people would call in with questions, and I'd be like, oh, that's the answer I would have given. I'm like, oh, that's the way I do it. And it was like, just little by little, made me feel like, oh, I do know what I'm doing. I am a professional. I am capable of doing this as a career. And this is something I can continue to do. And so I created my new portfolios, and I decided to go to a Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators conference. There was an Illustrators Day in San Francisco, which is near where I was. And I was like, I'll at least check it out and see if this is the kind of community I feel like I want to be a part of, and see if this is a good fit for me. And when I got there and they were doing their talk, they were talking about how hard it is to get into the children's book industry, because you have to the first barrier is you have to get an agent, and then the agent can possibly get you a job, but each of those steps are very difficult, and not many people make it, or whatever. Which again, I feel like everyone will tell you about anything that you want to do in art. Only the persistent make it. But I was listening to that, and I was thinking about how for the last many years of my life, I've been dependent on like a client or a CEO or whatever, and didn't feel like I really had control over my life as an artist of what I was getting to create or do. And although it would be great to get an agent, I was like, I would much rather spend my time creating my social media and to create a community and a website and a store and my own products that I can sell and be able to survive on my own without depending on an agent or a publisher or somebody else to survive. And so that's when I started creating the tutorials on Instagram. And I will tell you, the first time I made a tutorial, I was convinced that I was gonna do this like how to draw faces or hands or something, and that I would just get like 100 comments of people being like,
what makes you think you have the right to tell us how to do anything? And like, you did it wrong, that thumb's too long.
And because I was drawing in a more like cartoony way, you know, not appreciating or thinking that it's not very good, or you know, like you did it wrong, or like your people need to draw realistically, they don't need to draw like that. I was completely convinced that's the response I would get. But I was like, I'm gonna post it anyway. And the response was the exact opposite of that. It was like I mean, it wasn't 100, but it was, you know, usually when you're beginning on Instagram, it's like you get maybe 1 comment and 10 views. And instead I got like 100 views and 10 comments. And every single one of them was like, thank you so much. This is so helpful. I really appreciate it. And I was just like, oh my God, I could help people. That's amazing. I didn't think I could do that. And I should have known that I could do that, because literally working in studio, I was a senior illustrator and I taught the other illustrators how to make things cute and how to get things on style and improving their skills if they weren't quite up to stuff yet, and helping them improve their perspective or, you know, character design or posing or whatever it was. Like I had been doing that. And I had been illustrating little like short step-by-step tutorials of like educational content for like complex science for children. So I know how to break things down into just really small, simple steps, and I know how to teach art. And I could combine these two things on Instagram and help people. And that for me is where things shifted. So like when I say I am grateful for Instagram, it's not for, you know, likes and follows and stuff. It gave me, it helped give me a purpose again for creating art, that I could help impact others and help others, and gave me the inspiration and the confidence to be like, okay, I can make it on my own as an independent artist. There is value that I can give here. So I started doing more tutorials, and that really boomed. And I think I ended up with about 10,000 followers after about a year, which is I think great. I'm at over 100,000 now, and it's been 4 years. It's been more years now. So that was amazing to go from like, you know, 100 followers to 10,000. And there was so much support, especially in regards to what I feel like the value that I was bringing, that so many tutorials for art and online are really technical and advanced and realistic. And I didn't feel like anyone was teaching or showing how to draw simple things, unless it was like for like children, like 3 or 5 year olds. So I was like, no, there's actually a pretty good space here for people who are adults that want to draw simple stuff. And they don't want to be told, draw a circle, draw 2 more circles, you drew a bear. They want to understand art fundamentals, but they don't want to draw like, you know, Da Vinci. So I think that's sort of the space that I was able to fill, and why I got so much interest. And very specifically, I was able to teach people how to draw cute things, because that's what I'm all about. All that cute stuff. So it was easy to teach it based on the tutorials and how I was doing. I basically used that to almost like beta test what I was going to end up making into a book. Obviously there was interest into these tutorials. A book makes sense to put these all into a book. And so I decided I wanted to make a book. And the process for making the book was I actually had a colleague who used to work for I think Chronicle Books. So she had made a lot of like nonfiction books, and I was like, hey, let's do coffee. I want to know more about you. And I told her about my Instagram and the tutorials, and she's like, you could make a book so easy. I could sell a book for you. Let me help you do it. And she's like, can you get to like 15,000 followers or 20,000? I was like, yes, let's do it. And she's like, okay, well, if you can get to 15,000 followers, I can get you a book deal. And I said, let's go. So I did that. And then she ended up representing me just for this one book. And I did get actually, so the book I'm talking about is How to Draw a Doorbell, which is up there. I ended up getting a traditional book deal. However, I turned it down and decided to do a traditionally published route. I turned down the traditionally published route so that I could publish independently, which still deciding if that was a good idea. I'll let you know in like a year. The way that works is instead of having a publisher that pays you up front and they produce and publish and sell it, I paid for everything up front. I did a Kickstarter to fund it, and I paid for the printing cost and the design cost and the editing cost. And I used an independent publisher to help me distribute them and get it on Amazon and apply for book awards and things like that. And so the Kickstarter did great. It funded, I think it was about 28,000, which was what I put 5,000 as my target that I needed, but I actually did need 25, so that's good. Because just graphic design was 5K, so it goes fast. And so I used that to do a book order of about like 5,000 books, I think, or something like that, and to pay for all of those upstart costs. And then I was slowly selling them on Instagram and my own website. I use Shopify, and I started making income that way. Pretty much right when that Kickstarter ended, I had planned like this graceful exit from working full-time to being a fully independent artist, and instead I got let go. And technically I had been transitioned to like contractor because I moved states, but then they were just like, we're not going to continue it, which honestly is fine. So I lost my job. My Kickstarter ends. We're publishing the book, and then my father passes away, and I have to be a caregiver for a family member. And so that was supposed to be like my big launch into being an independent artist. And instead, so basically instead of like working from 9 to 5, I was like caregiving from 9 to 5, and then I'd put my kids to bed and I'd work when I put my kids to bed. Actually it was like 12 to 5 for caregiving. So I'd have like 3 hours in the morning and then a couple hours when I put my kids to bed. And so it's actually not until this week, which is why I'm able to do a YouTube video, that I'm actually able to be full-time as an independent artist and actually have my entire day to spend to this. So I'm looking forward to telling you guys how amazing that is, because it's the first time I've ever experienced it. But while doing that, while only getting 3 hours a day in the morning and maybe a couple hours at night, I continued to post on Instagram, and I ended up going over onto TikTok. And if I can give one piece of advice, just one, for social media, any social media that you're using introduces a new product or like new feature, use it, because when you use their new feature, they will post it more than if you're using their previous features, because they want other people to use it. So I was on TikTok and they introduced TikTok Shop, and I was like, I'm gonna get on that as soon as I can. And I got on it and I got my book on it, and holy moly, my book started to sell like hotcakes on TikTok. And during, I think it was like May, I think I had only 600 books on hand, which had probably been the amount I had sold. I think maybe I had sold 100 books. I have plenty of books on hand, and I sold like 600 in a couple days. And then I was out of books again, and I had to do a reorder. I think that was in like April, and it takes about 3 months to get new books. So then I ordered new books, and then in like the month before Christmas, I had my books back on TikTok again, and this time I had 2,500 books, 2,500 books, and again they sold in like 3 weeks. So that is the income that I am living off of right now while we wait for the next print run. I was also able to get just general sales in my shop, my Shopify account, which is carliannecreates.com, where I started selling like Procreate brushes and textures and ebooks and digital downloads. And I think my sales, like right when I had done the Kickstarter, I think that entire year I had made maybe $100. And by the end of the next year, I think I had made, I actually don't know, I should look at that, but many thousands of dollars in the tens of thousands of dollars range. So that was a really, really big jump within that 1 year. And that has all been from posting on Instagram or TikTok and promoting, and also YouTube. But most of my sales come from Instagram, except for when TikTok went crazy. Posting tutorials and offering the ebooks and digital downloads, and that has been my income. So right now, I am set up so that I can independently control my life as an artist and to sell my own stuff. However, during this process, I ended up having an agent reach out to me who found me on Instagram and was building her sublist and offered to represent me as an illustrator, and I decided to go with that. Her name is Jem, and she's with the Andrea Brown Literary Agency, which is a great agency. And I know a lot of people, like, that's one of the hardest steps to get into, is just to get an agent. And the usual route is to submit to a bunch of agents and to get approval. So I kind of cheated. She found me through my Instagram. However, I would just say that, like, instead of applying to a bunch of submissions, I basically spent, like, you know, a year or two posting on Instagram and growing that instead. So I wouldn't say it was less work or easier, but it was a different route. So she found me, and then I told her that I would really like to be able to write and illustrate children's books as opposed to just illustrate them. And she was totally on board for that. So she signed me on, and I gave her a book dummy, which is basically the book is written, and then you lay out sketches of each page of what it would look like with 1 or 2 final images. That's what a book dummy is. And she submitted that to publishers, and I got a 2-book deal with the publishing company Pixel Ink, which is my Yeti book, which will come out. It's called Even Yetis Get Cold. So the first book will be out in fall. So I'm finishing that up right now. It's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, and I'm not doing it. And then after I finish that, I have some other children's book stuff in the works of, sorry, I'm fiddling, other things that I'm going to be writing and illustrating. And I am working on the next How to Draw Adorable book. I'm looking at getting it traditionally published. So when we're all done, I will have traditionally published it, self-published it, and independently published it. And that'll be a really fun video to go over the differences between that and how I did. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now, and I'm able to support my family of 4. I'm the only income right now, and pretty excited. So I hope that was helpful, and if you guys have any questions or specific things that you want to know more about, I hope this was inspirational and helpful, and I'll see you next time.